God is good.
All the time.
And all the time.
God is good.
Do you believe that movie's like 30 years old now?
Oh my gosh.
That is one of the best movies ever. Anybody in here not seen The Matrix? Jonathan, you've not seen that? Come on, you would eat that movie up. You would talk about it for weeks. You've never seen The Matrix?
If it's not on Hallmark, Mom's not saying it.
So there's a guy named Jake, and he wears buffalo check and vest, and he meets this girl in this little kid. Good morning. It's good to be with y'all. Anybody remember the TV show Hee Haw? Oh yeah. Remember how they would do that shout out to the different states, and you would sit there and wait there. So I want to do a shout out on Facebook. I'm glad for the folks that join us, but today is a special day for my family in Punta Gorda because my cousin / dad Charles is celebrating a birthday. So Shirley, if you're watching, give him a hug, tell him to watch, and tell him happy birthday. I want you to hear the word of the Lord with me. Ecclesiastes 1, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All the streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things to be among those who come after. You want to hear something really strange, sad, and bizarre all at once? If you could travel at the speed of light, 95% of the universe, not our galaxy, 95% of the universe is already out of reach. The galaxies, they come in clusters, but the universe is accelerating faster than the speed of light. It's expanding and disappearing. And so even if you had the ability to travel in a spaceship like the movie Interstellar, 95% of the universe right now at this point is already beyond grasp. Seems like the laws of physics are harder to comprehend than we thought. When I tell people on a job site that I'm a preacher, oftentimes the conversation will turn to the book of Revelations with an S, right? Revelations. And people will ask me my thoughts, and then they'll say, you know this is the end of time, right? You know, it's right there in the book of Revelations, you know. And, sometimes it happens with, like, tomorrow's an inauguration, so there's a transition in leadership. People get all freaked out about that, or sometimes it'll be like something happening, but it's right there. Right, we're in the book of Revelation, it's the end time. Everyone's caught up in the book of Revelation, but I'll tell you, in my opinion, there is no more a timely book or a contemporary feeling book than Ecclesiastes. It feels more like it was written in 2025 to me than any other book. I mean, yes, it's thousands of years old, right? The book of Ecclesiastes, but it could have been written today. It's something that you could read today and say, yes, I know exactly where you are coming to. And like I said, a lot of people get caught up in Revelation or other books that they think are more fascinating, interesting, or whatever. But this is a book I think that deserves our full attention. And I'll say this too. If there is any book of the Bible that really demands our attention to the style or the fancy term genre in which it was written, this would be one of those books. Because you can't read it as if it's predictive literature or if it's just something to do with other areas that you think of worship or spirituality. This is what's written in what would be called wisdom literature. And what's interesting is, in the region where Solomon lives, all of the cultures like Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Persians, they all had their own version of wisdom literature that people would depend on. It helped them to put a filter to the reality, right? The world is ordered in a certain way. How do I now live? Right? And so these wise men, these sages, they didn't pretend to be prophets, right? They didn't try to act priestly. They said, here's what the world looks like. Here's something practical. Here's your roadmap. Here's how you discern what's going on in the world around you. And with the book of Ecclesiastes, it's good to know. This is what Solomon is trying to do. He's trying to provide wisdom. He's trying to provide a map that you can navigate the difficulties of this world with. And when you read through it, it screams pessimism. It screams cynicism. And then at other times, there's just a little whisper of optimism. A little whisper of hope. A little nugget here and there of encouragement. But it seems like he's been watching cable news and just binging it for about 3 days. And he's red-rimmed in the eyes, and he's looking at the world around him. And he reflects on the human toil. Think about how much time you put into preparing for whatever job you're going to have. All right? I don't care if you just go to high school, right? First 18 years of your life, right? You're learning to read, write, arithmetic, all that. And now you're going to go into the trades or whatever. Or whether you go to college and you're looking for something, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you go to college and graduate school and all that stuff, right? Just think of how much time you put into your preparation to get in your job. And now think of how many years you work in your occupation. The human toil under the sun. It's a lot of years getting ready to work and then to work. And what Solomon's saying, guess what? It's meaningless. What do you get for all that toil under the sun? Nothing. Nada. Zilch. Solomon points out you're either under the sun or under the soil. It's a lot like that song, Kansas, Dust in the Wind. There's a good song. You ever watch the video of that? You might not want to. The violinist, he's only got one eye. It'll freak you out the first time they watch it. You get a patch. You'd think they'd give him a glass eye with all that money, but I guess times were tough and all they could afford. Dust in the wind, that's all we are, right? It's a drop of water in an endless sea. Very cynical, very pessimistic. And every ancient culture that had all that wisdom literature, and they stored it, and they treasured it, and they passed it on, and then you come on the scene. And you think you've outgrown it. You think you've surpassed the need for proverbs, and ancient wisdom, and maxims, and sayings, and directions from old dusty books that just don't seem to be relevant. That's because you haven't spent time with it. We will never outgrow our human need for wisdom literature. And for the people who think they've outgrown it, there's this guy in Texas, and he used to work for Oprah. He was actually Oprah's life coach. And then some studio picked him up because he was kind of bald and kind of had some attitude. Who am I talking about?
Dr. Phil.
Dr. Phil. And what's his famous line when people sit on the stage with him and they're just blowing up a train wreck of a life, and he looks at me and says,
How's that work for you?
how's that working out for you? If you've outgrown wisdom literature, how's that working out for you? Because we'll never, ever outgrow the need for wisdom literature. If you think you have life figured out, and you look around and you say, well, it's ordered in this way, how do I live? What's human nature like? What am I supposed to do? This is where you come. The book of Ecclesiastes and most wisdom literature looks at the big questions in life and actually spends time looking at them, thinking about them, discussing the complexities of them, the difficulties of understanding them. And as you read it, if you read it beyond the surface reading, your soul is laid bare. And you say, I see myself. I feel that tension. I want to resolve that tension. What is the big question we ask every kid once they're 5 years old through at least high school? What do you want to be when you grow up? Right? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I know the Christian answer is, we don't ask them what they want to be, but who do they want to be? What type of person do you want? We're all just circling around the same question. What is your purpose? Listen, if Solomon is right, that life is short and it feels awfully meaningless, and the winds circle around, the sun goes down, it comes up the other side, and we're just basically dust in the wind. What is your purpose? Is there purpose? Is there more to life than the toil that takes place under the sun? What's his name? Preacher. The preacher. Colette is the Hebrew word which means assembler, collector. Right? This is someone who assembles wise sayings, collects wisdom. We usually, in your English translation, it will either be teacher or preacher. It's the same thing. And here he comes. And it's Solomon, I believe. There's discussion who it really is. I do think it's David's son Solomon here. And he doesn't come across like an expert, right? He doesn't come across like the authority. Comes across like a streetwise cynic. Like, I've been out there. I've lived. I've seen everything that's out there. And now I'm going to tell you, it adds up to not much. Vanity. Vanity, vanity, vanity. Hebrew word habel here is used 38 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. It can mean breath, vapor, mist, or meaninglessness. And so Solomon raises the question, a fair question, a question that you got to ask at some point in your brief existence here on earth. Are we just killing time? Are we just waiting for the next world? Or are we living in this world? Is there something that brings it to the fullest? Is there some value to the here and now? There's so much that's surrounding us. So much of it's out of reach, like the galaxies that are speeding away faster than the speed of light. I can't put my hand on it. I can't get it. My eye is never full. I'll never fill my eye from seeing. My ear will never be full from hearing. There's so much to this life that's not going to ever bring a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction and conclusion. Is there more to it, or is it just a vapor? Anybody ever read through the book of Ecclesiastes all the way, like from one end to the other? If you have, then you know this. If you haven't, here's what you can expect. It's disjointed. He rambles. He's like me. He repeats himself. And I'm an old man, and old men do that, right? At times he does something that none of us in this room would admit to, but we do. He contradicts himself. It's not an easy book at times because it feels negative, contradictive. In the beginning, not in these first 11 verses, but in the beginning of the book, it's a little hedonistic. I gave myself over to everything. All kinds of pleasures, built gardens, had slaves, did this, did that, and then it's fatalistic at times. Sun comes up, sun goes down, and guess what? There's nothing to show for it. That's hard. Oh, by the way, that phrase, under the sun, that Solomon uses, this is the only book in the Bible where it's found. He's the one, he coins it. He's the only one to use it. And what's interesting about going through Ecclesiastes in church, doesn't sound very religious. Solomon does not seem extremely religious or holy because he's focusing so much on the same thing that most of us focus on. This life, the trials, the struggles, the troubles, right? And here's what I do like about Solomon. He refuses to offer easy answers to the hard questions, right? Especially in and out. Like you know how, like Mike Tyson, like he used to fight, but then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened a month or two ago with that Jake Paul kid, he couldn't fight, right? We wrestle, we fight, we struggle with God's ways in this world. That seems to be really irritating to Solomon. He's going to raise issues about how God interacts with what takes place under the sun. And he seems frustrated. He doesn't seem satisfied. But he doesn't offer the cliche answers. The, oh, I know exactly what you're going through answers. Oh, I'm so sorry but no, he doesn't do all of that. He doesn't do what we try to do when loved ones, when people who are near to us come to us and they have problems. We want to tidy up the mess. We want to make it simple. We want a great packaged answer that makes everyone feel all warm and fuzzy, like it's going to be fair, like it's going to be good. No. Solomon does not ever tidy it up. And in fact, if you read through Ecclesiastes, he almost dismisses the hope of the resurrection. Right? Better to be a living dog than a dead lion. Right? We're all going to die. We all return to the dust, Solomon will say. Or we'll get there soon enough. It doesn't seem like a very comforting book. It doesn't seem to have a lot of hope, a lot of optimism. But that's for the average reader. That's for the person that comes with just the surface reading. That's the person who's just coming to it for quick, easy answers that they want to fix and patch things up so they can move along to the next part without actually slowing down and digging in deep. Strangely, what's missing in Ecclesiastes are the grander themes of the Old Testament. It seems like it's hard to get through any book of the Old Testament without some reference, obviously after the Pentateuch, after the first 5 books, with some reference to the Exodus. Moses as deliverer, God as deliverer, the covenant on Sinai. Daddy! Whose kid is that? Get that kid under control. But he doesn't do that like most of the Old Testament does. There's no Sinai covenant. There's no conquest of the promised land. None of that. And in fact, what makes it hard to preach and study through Ecclesiastes as the Christian church, there's not a single reference, not that I can find, not just to no angels or demons or things like that. There's not a messianic promise. Solomon doesn't promise a coming Messiah to deliver and to fix all of this that takes place under the sun. So you don't have a lot of supernatural, you don't have a lot of hope, you don't have a lot of optimism, but the beauty is the cosmic battle of good and evil that we know that we're all enmeshed and entangled in. It's kind of rendered down, boiled down, distilled to the simplicity of the absurdity of it all. Everything under the sun, everything on the earth feels absurd. You can't say that. You can't be someone who believes in the Bible, follows God, and then look at the stuff around you and say it feels absurd. Why not? Solomon does. He's inspired by the Holy Spirit to write, and he boils it all down to everything that takes place under the sun. It's vanity. It's meaningless. It's pointless. There's a sense of absurdity. Why? Because what Solomon wants you to see is all of the pursuits, all of the efforts, all of the things that we strive for, at best consist of this. They're barely a distraction. Right? We watched that clip from The Matrix, right? Neo is sitting there. Do you want the truth? That's what it says, right? All I want to do is offer you the truth. Now you can take the blue pill, you wake up in the morning, and think whatever you want to think. Right? Solomon is offering you the red pill. Do you want to go through the next 20, 40, 60 years of your life under the delusion that this distraction is all that there is? Well, Solomon obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? He can't be accurate. This can't be right. See, is there a thing which is this new? It's already been done in the ages before us. Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but you can get on your phone and you can search for anything you want on this thing called Google. So see, Solomon, right now, we've just disqualified Solomon for being able to have anything worthwhile to say to us, because he says there's nothing new. No, that's no. Information, language, that's always been around since the Garden of Eden. The method and the medium of which you deliver it, that's just the trinkets on the outside. Solomon didn't even have the printing press. We've got books now. We've got the internet now. We've got cable TV now. Language, information, the struggles, the complexity of life, they've been here since the beginning. And Solomon has no problem pointing out the contradictory nature of this life. And again, no easy answers. What you want, what most of us want, is, does it make sense to be here on this short time on earth? Can we find our purpose, and can we harmonize the tension of what ought to be faced with what we have? And Solomon's not going to give it. Not the tension, not the resolution, not the harmonizing of it, not easily, not until you do what he wants you to do, which is the same steps that he went through. Ponder it, think about it, meditate on it, actually open your eyes. Right? Actually take the red pill and open your eyes and look at what the truth of reality is and of the challenge. But how do we do that? And that's the beauty of the book of Ecclesiastes. How do I open my eyes? How do I look at the reality around me? How do I honestly, accurately assess it without being so overwhelmed that I have brain fog and I can't think through it? By utilizing wisdom. That is the beauty of Ecclesiastes. You reflect, you look at the observations, you get your head out of the sand, and you wake up, and you look at the world around you, and you realize it's not a fairy tale. Yeah, there's dragons out there, but they're not always easily conquered like they are in the fairy tales. If you've read through Ecclesiastes and you know it, or if you ever plan to read through it, it's going to have a feeling of autobiographical. Why is that? Why does Solomon come across as, here I am, I'm the son of David, and he's going to share all these experiences, and he comes across. Why is it autobiographical? Why is it written and delivered in such a way? Because of the original audience. Who was it that Solomon first writes this for? According to historians and people who are way smarter than me, they believe that he wrote it for the elite of Jerusalem, right? They're no longer just nomads, they're no longer just agrarian. They've now come together in the city complex of Jerusalem. So you've got the political elite, the elite of the temple, right? Because Solomon is the guy who finally builds the temple. David wanted to, but remember Solomon does. And now corruption has entered in. Now complacency has entered in. Now his audience, the people that he knows he's concerned with, have become preoccupied. They're preoccupied with their socioeconomic status. They're preoccupied with their power, with their positions. And all of a sudden they become fearful. Life is unpredictable. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. I can't add anything to it, and I'm gonna die. They're worried about the imminent death that awaits all of us, because we're either under the sun or under the soil. And so Solomon says, guess what? I have a little bit of life experience. I have a little bit of wisdom. I have a little bit of something to offer, so I'm going to write it as a first person. I'm going to write it as the way I've lived this out. So remember, the movers, the shakers, the people of importance in Jerusalem, they lost their moorings. They become disjointed. They were corrupt, distracted. And so he wants to offer wisdom to help. Nothing is new. Nothing is permanent. And again, if you want to get caught up in the idea of we have so much more technology today than he had then, so he's inaccurate and dismissive, those are all red herrings. Those are all just distractions. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not into all the ancient alien stuff. But you know they found batteries that were from Babylon, like at least 2,500 years old. What did they need a battery for? And then, of course, there's that Greek sponge diver find 100 years ago of that thing that's kind of like a computer, which I can't pronounce. It begins with the letter A, right? They unpackaged that. It could predict eclipses and movements of our solar system 260 years at a time in the future. Who knows what kind of technology they had back then? Who knows how advanced or they weren't advanced? Red herring, distraction. The method and the medium of which these things are delivered don't matter. So, you got to ask yourself, what is the point of it then? Is there more to life than the horizontal existence that we experience under the harshness of the sun? I'm just going to give you a little spoiler alert. Apart from God, no. That's the big point that Solomon's going to make. Everything that's under the sun is vanity. And apart from God, no, there will be no point. But if you're a thinking person, and if you've had your coffee this morning, if I haven't worn you out yet, listen, we're only in the first 11 verses. We've got like 12 chapters to go. Catch up with me here. If you're a thinking person, on the tip of your tongue there's a question. You can't quite articulate it yet. Alright, so we've got a lot of pessimism, skepticism, cynicism, pointless, absurdity. You know, it's like Jean-Paul Sartre has written this. I don't know. It's very existential, very grim. Like I need to be in a French cafe sipping a latte and watching the people strike out in the streets. I don't know. It's pretty rough. So the question's there. Come on, I know you can feel it. How am I supposed to serve God in a world like this? That's the question. Solomon's going to tell you everything under the sun is meaningless and pointless apart from God. Okay, I get that. But how am I supposed to serve God in this context? How do I serve an all-loving God in a world that just feels absolutely confusing, disappointing, frustrating, and pointless? Well, that's the challenge for Christians today. To be able to reflect openly and honestly on the material of Ecclesiastes. Look for once in your life without someone else giving you a canned, packaged answer. Look for once in your life with your own eyes, with your own thoughts, at the deep questions that Solomon will bring up. I mean, okay, I get it. I grant it. I concede. Doom scrolling is much better for your brain, right? I mean, it's much easier. Maybe not much better, right? I'm guilty of binge watching. Tammy and I'll find a show, and next thing you know, we're through all the episodes. Solomon says, look, there's more to just seeking pleasure and temporary entertainment in the midst of the emptiness. So let me wrap up for today. If you're someone that's already got life figured out and you're very content, then this sermon won't be for you, and the next several sermons through Ecclesiastes will be of zero interest. If the world is simple and you have it figured out, then I don't have anything to offer you. But for the rest of us who don't find it so simple, let me ask you this. Can you experience joy? Can you experience enjoyment? Can you find fulfillment? Can you find your purpose? Can you find meaning while escaping the bitterness that the life under the sun can sometimes build in our soul? I believe that Ecclesiastes is the perfect roadmap to navigate the tension that we find ourselves in. I think this is how the church navigates the modern world. All the transitions that we face, all of the trials, all the difficulties. And here's my invitation. Join me for the next foreseeable future. I don't know. Maybe we'll get through Ecclesiastes in a month. Maybe it'll take a year. I have no idea. But here's my invitation to you. Take the red pill. Look at the truth. Be open to what Solomon has to say and see if there is some value to this brief life that we have. All right. Let's stand and sing.